Hello viewer, a warm welcome to Elimu TV where you watch and learn. I'm a teacher, Madam Christine Okoth, taking you through Biology Form 2, and this is our second part of our lesson. And today in our lesson, we're going to learn the following things. First, we're going to define absorption. We're going to talk about the functions of the root. We're also going to look at the transverse section of a root, and also going to look at the internal structures of the root. Then also going to look at the functions of the internal structures. And lastly, I'm going to give you an assignment. So let us start with reviewing the previous assignment. So the assignment number 1 was, which blood vessel is used to transport heat all over the body? And the answer is the veins. They are the ones which are responsible for transporting heat all over the body. Then the second question was, why do large organisms need a transport system? And we said that the surface area to the volume ratio will decrease, therefore it cannot transport substances easily. So they need an elaborate transport system. That is as per we had discussed in our first lesson. Proceeding, going to look at the absorption of water and the mineral salts. So why do these plants need to take in the water and the mineral salts? The plants take in some compounds like the carbon dioxide through their leaves. They absorb some other materials such as the compounds of nitrogen, phosphorus, and etc. from the soil and through the roots. So these mineral salts need to be absorbed so that they can be used to other parts of the body. Looking at the structure of a plant has two main parts, the systems. We have the upper part, which is the shoot system, and the lower part, which is the root system. The shoot system consists of the leaves and the stems, and while the root system only consists of the root. So what are some of the functions of the shoot system? One is for photosynthesis, that is through the leaves which are responsible for that. Then it's also a shoot system, it's also responsible for reproduction, and they also store the food which have been synthesized by the leaves, and they're also responsible for the transport of minerals and water, and they're also for transporting the hormones. So we have the root system. Their main functions, one is for the anchorage. With the roots, they are the ones which hold firmly all the upper part of the plant. So the roots are for anchorage. Then the second thing which we are learning today, the roots also are responsible for absorption. That is the uptake of the waters and the mineral salts to all parts of the plant. Then another function of the roots is also for the storage. There are some roots which store the food material. Then they are also responsible for transport, and they are also responsible for the hormones. Proceeding, let us now define what absorption is. So this is the act or the process of taking in substances into the cells or across the tissues and organs through the process we call diffusion or osmosis. Now from our illustration here, the roots which are responsible for absorption, they will take in water and the mineral salts from the surrounding soil particles. So these soil particles, some of them have minerals which have already been dissolved in the water. So the function of the root is to absorb in that water and the mineral salts so that it can be transported to all the parts of the plant through the vessels which are called the xylem vessel. That one is responsible for transport of water, and the phloem vessel, which is responsible for the transport of food material, that is the mineral salts. So if the distance between the roots and the leaves is very small, food and other materials can be transported through the process of diffusion. But if the distance between different plant parts are often quite large, as in for example in a tree. So looking at a tree, the different organs, they are very far from each other. Like for example, a root is very far from the leaves, so there will be need of an elaborate transport system that is going to help this tall plant, for example the tall tree, to transport this water and the mineral salts, so that the plants can use all these to it can be transported equally to all parts of the plant. So let us look at the function of the root, because they are the ones which are responsible for the absorption of the water and the mineral salts. One, the function of the root is to anchor the plants in the soil. That is, they hold the plant parts very firmly, because the root, it's the part which is down. Then its function will be just to hold all the other parts which are above it firmly up the soil. Then another function of the roots is to absorb water and mineral salts from the soil. The roots are also responsible for the storage of food. Another function of the root is also they form a passageway from water and dissolved substances from the root into the stem, and also for food from the stem down into the root. So those are some of the functions of the root. Proceeding forward, let us look at the transverse section of a root. That one is of a dicot. As if you can observe, that is the internal structures. So at the first part we have the root hairs. These are the projections that come from the epidermis. Now from the root hair we have the part we call the epidermis. So that is the second part after the root hair. From the epidermis we have the cortex. That is the yellowish part. It's in between the epidermis and the endodermis. Proceeding forward, we have the endodermis. So that is the most middle part of a root, the transverse section. Then from the endodermis, it contains the two vessels which are responsible for transport. That is the xylem, which is responsible for the transport of water, and the phloem tissue, which is responsible for the transport of food material, that is the mineral salts from the roots. So the other illustration is of a monocot root. You can see there are some similarities and there are some differences, but both of them, they contain the transport vessels, which are the xylem tissue and the phloem tissues. So let us look at the structural difference between the monocot and the dicot roots. All of them, they have the outermost part, which we call the epidermis, and before the epidermis, all of them have the root hairs. Now all of them, they also have the xylem tissue, but the arrangement of the xylem tissue is different in each of them. They also have the phloem tissues, which are responsible for the transport of mineral salts, but the structure are different. They both have the cortex, that is the part in between the epidermis and the endodermis. They both have the pericycle, and lastly, all of them have the endodermis, that is the innermost part of the dicot or the dicot or the monocot root. So let us look at these differences between the monocot root and the dicot root, the transverse section that is. So all of them have the pith, which is present. The monocot, it has a pith which is present, while the dicot, the pith is absent. The pith is the part which is at the center, the middlemost part. Then the second difference between them is the xylem. The xylem, remember, it's the vessel which is used for transport of water. So in monocot seeds, the xylem is oval or round in shape, while in the dicot seed, it forms an X-shaped pattern in every center of the root. Proceeding forward, the cortex, all of them, we say they have a cortex, but the difference is in the monocot, the cortex is normally very wide, while in the dicot, the cortex is very narrow. Remember, the cortex is the part just after, in between the epidermis and the endodermis. Then the pericycle, it is often multi-layered. So the pericycle is the part which is just after the cortex. So the pericycle in the monocot is often multi-layered, while in the dicot it's just made of a single layer. So let us look at each structure of the root, the internal structure that is. So the first structure, the outermost structure, is what we call the epidermis. So you can look at the diagram and locate where the epidermis is. It's just next after the root hairs. So after the root hair, you have the epidermis. So this is the outer layer of the cell of a young root. The cells are closely packed, thin-walled parenchyma cells with no cuticles, chloroplast, or stomata. The root hairs arise from some of the epidermal cells. And what are the function of the epidermis? Because it's the outermost layer, it is responsible for the protection of the underlying tissues of the root. And another function of the epidermis, the cells and the roots hair, they absorb water and dissolved ion. So they help in the process of absorption, that is of water and the mineral salt. Proceeding to the next structure, internal structure of the root, we have what we call the root hair. These are just extensions of specialized root epidermal cell. They increase the surface area for absorption of water and mineral salts. Looking at the structure, you can locate where the root hair cells are. They are the outermost layer. They're like the projections. So their work is to, as much as they increase the surface area for the absorption of water and the mineral salts. Proceeding to another internal structure of a root, we have the cortex. This is the region between the epidermis and the vascular cylinder. You can just locate it by looking at our diagram. The cortex is the greenish, the light greenish region in our diagram. It can be subdivided into two. We have the exodermis, central cortex, and the endodermis. So the cell walls are thickened and contain suberin and lignin. The central cortex, it usually consists of a thin-walled parenchyma walls with numerous intercellular spaces. What about the endodermis? It forms the innermost layer of the cortex. These cells are more rectangular in shape, the side walls are being thickened with suberin. So if you look at the endodermis, it's just the part right after the cortex. So after the cortex, you have the endodermis. Now let us look at the functions. So what is the function of the cortex? The first one, it allows for diffusion of water, mineral salts, and oxygen from the root hair inwardly. The cortex also is responsible for the storage of food reserve, especially that is in the starch. Then the cortex also serves as a transport to transport water and salts from the root hair to the center of the root. Then we look at the function of the endodermis. It facilitates the movement of water from the cortex to the xylem. So it helps in the facilitation of that movement of water from the cortex so that the xylem can transport the water through all parts of the plant. So if you look at the diagram, we have the endodermis, the part just right after the cortex. So the endodermis contains the two vessels, which are the phloem and the xylem vessel. Proceeding forward, let us look at the function of the pericycle. So first of all, where is this pericycle located? It is located between the endodermis and the phloem in the plant. You can just look at the illustration, the pericycle. So it is just after the endodermis. Looking at the diagram, that yellowish part over there, that is where you can locate the pericycle. So what is its function? It enables plants to grow roots, that is, they regulate the formation of the lateral roots. Then they also facilitate plants' development. So let us look at the main vessels which are found now after the endodermis. So we have the two vessels. One, we have the xylem and the phloem. So the xylem, this is the living outer vascular system carrying water and mineral throughout the plant. So this is the tissue which is responsible for the transport of water from the roots to all parts of the plant. So that one is just for the waters. While the phloem tissue, this is the living, the innermost vascular system carrying dissolved sugars and organic compounds throughout the plant. So this is the transport vessel for transport of the food particles, which are the mineral salts and the dissolved sugars. So let us look at the different zones of the root. So the root has 4 main different zones. The first zone is what we call the zone of maturation. So in this part, this is the uppermost part, the cells differentiate into different types of cell. If you look at our diagram, the first part where it has been labeled differentiation. So that is the plant where the cells will they mature up in that place. So by them maturing, they help the plant to have many types of cells. So that one is responsible for maturity. Then the next part of the next zone of the root is what we call the zone of elongation. Just from the name, you can detect it's for the increasing in length. So this zone allows the root to get deeper within the soil. So it helps the root to grow, that is lengthwise. Then the next zone, we have the meristematic region. This is, there's a rapid mitosis of undifferentiated meristematic cell. So this is the place where mitosis normally occur of the undifferentiated meristematic cells. Then the final part, we have the root cap, which is the down there. This part is for the protection of the meristematic region. So its sole responsibility is for protection. So this is just still what we have discussed, the 4 zones of the root, first starting with the zone of maturation, going to the zone of elongation, then the meristematic region, and finally the root cap region. That has been our lesson for today. And before we leave, I'm going to leave you with an assignment. And the assignment will be, what is the difference between epidermis and endodermis in terms of location and functions? For all your feedback, or if you like to ask any question, or if you like also to answer the question, you can SMS us on the number 40007. You can write to us. Our Facebook page is Elimu TV. You can also write to us. Our Twitter handle is at Elimu_KE. I have been your teacher, Madam Christine Okoth. See you in the next lesson. Thank you.